Okay, so I wanted to do a video on this. There's a lot of videos that I want to do pertaining this, but somebody talked about this and it made me think of everything that I was talking about with the whole Thandi Newton situation. Um, I had a lot of different conversations with people talking about representation, and I came across someone else's video who was talking about Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or whatever reboot, and how many of the lighter skinned people who were casted as dark skinned this time around. And I wanted to talk about this because it's like so often people want to act like light skin and brown skin people, that our image doesn't matter, our opinions don't matter, and they really don't care about our representation. Why I say that is because this dynamic, I was trying to ask when I was having the dialogue about Thandi Newton, who do brown skinned women play? And many people kept diverting the issue. They kept not answering the issue. I could not get anybody to answer the question. You know, if anything, I got people who were like saying, oh, brown skin, it's the same as dark skin. And then they would act like many of the people that I said were brown skinned were not brown skinned. Like, for example, this one person said that Regina King and Regina Hall were the same as like someone like Viola Davis, and that people like Taraji P. Henson were the same as Viola Davis, but they were not the same as someone like Tyra Banks or Nicki Minaj or Rihanna. When if you look at their shades, I mean, they're obviously hardly, there's a small difference maybe between them and a lighter brown hue, but they're certainly not the same as Viola Davis. Like, Viola Davis is darker than most dark skinned black people. And those people are just brown skinned people. So it's kind of like people kept trying to make brown skin a dark skinned identity, and then they wouldn't, like people who are brown skinned, for example, and they couldn't fit with dark skinned people, they kept trying to call those brown skinned people like light skinned, or leave the topic and ignore the topic, basically. You know, because obviously someone who is trying to cast someone who is biracial, usually that role would usually go to someone like a Zendaya Coleman, Alicia Keys, maybe, maybe even more Eurocentric, like, for example, Meghan Markle would be actually a better example, or Chelsea Gilligan. A lot of the time, if people were to only make non-dark skinned black people have to compete for biracial roles, a lot of black people would be left out because, one, we don't look like biracials many of the time. We may have their skin tone, but we may not have all the features that are Eurocentric. What I'm trying to say, for example, there are mixed people who don't fit that phenotype either. So that's why I'm saying that there's a lot of light skinned black people who would not fit, for example, a phenotype of Chelsea Gilligan. You know what I mean? Or Alicia Keys, for that matter. Their hair may be different, their facial features may be different, and so forth. They could be the same color, but how are they going to be cast for a role that people, when they look at their face, might think that they're more black than mixed? And that's why I was talking about what role do brown skinned black women take too? Women like Rihanna, Nicki Minaj, Beyonce, Tyra Banks, those women would never play roles for biracials. You think they can play roles where they look identical to an Alicia Keys? They can't. Not at all. Not in the face, not in their skin tone, not even in their hair. Um, you know, it's just what it is. So it's just like I've asked that over and over again, and it's like people always are like, if you can't pass for dark skinned and you can't carry the dark skinned image, you can't represent dark skin. That's what they were trying to act like. Now, what I feel like is this: okay, if we were going to split dark skin from light skin, brown skin from dark and light for that matter, um, then be we would basically have to acknowledge that when we're talking about light skinned black people's roles and brown skinned black people's roles, that dark skinned black people can't take our roles either. It's okay for a dark skinned black person to say they don't want a light skinned person representing them in a movie. They don't want a brown skinned person representing them in a movie. And that's the thing. So many times there have been complaints about brown skinned people representing dark skinned black people like Will Smith, Zoe Saldana, and so forth. And many of the time, if someone like Will Smith said they did not want a dark skinned black man representing them, people would just call them racist, colorist, self hating, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, so you can say that you don't want us to represent you, but we can't say that we don't want you to represent us. Our image can't be preserved because the reason why your image is the only one that you want to preserve is because you don't want to see the other people. It's not about representation, I think. I think it's about not wanting to see the other people. It makes them feel insecure. I've said this before that a lot of their acting out is a symptom of insecurity, you know. And I think this is just another one because why would you say that you should be allowed to represent brown skinned and light skinned black people in movies, but brown skinned, light skinned black people, we can't represent you? It basically gets rid of any roles that brown skinned black people can take. Like, we get hit the hardest, honestly, because in reality, someone like a Regina Hall or Regina King, between a Viola Davis and someone like Tyra Banks would have much closer phenotype than, you know, a Viola Davis. That leaves, if you can't represent the phenotype that is closest to you, then you're pretty much out of luck because whoever else you're going to try and represent isn't going to be your closest phenotype because you just got locked out of the phenotype that is closest to you, you know. And I kind of just think that, people don't really pay attention to, the fact that what it actually says about dark-skinned black women who claim that they want representation, but in reality what they're saying is not that they want representation, they don't want representation of light-skinned and brown-skinned black women. That's more of what they're saying. That's why they say, oh, go represent biracials. Like, brown-skinned black people can represent biracials. How? I mean, most people wouldn't even get the storyline. And I mean, you could maybe as a side topic just have them as biracial, but if that was a main thing to the story, like if it was a family, for example, it would not be appropriate to have someone like Ciara playing a biracial role. It would not make any sense to have someone like Nicki Minaj playing a biracial role. You know, it would just basically leave brown skinned black people out in the cold where, they can't be represented, basically. And that goes back to the whole idea that, some black people, they really don't want brown skin and light skinned black people to exist. Therefore, they don't want representation, reminding them that we exist. Because, as I've said before, there's been a lot of times where people will always act like, it triggers them that brown skin and light skinned black people exist. If they can continue the narrative that light skinned and brown skinned black people should be in the biracial category and representing biracial people, it continues their idea that light skinned and brown skinned black people don't belong as black people. That's why they try to promote the idea of them not being represented and always trying to encourage dark skinned black people's roles, but no rules for light skinned or brown skinned black people, and trying to take the roles of light skinned and brown skinned black people. To me, it's just like, at this point, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you are upset that brown skinned people represent you sometimes, then brown skinned black people should have an issue if a dark skinned black person is representing them. It's only fair. Otherwise, if you don't have that perspective, you'll just get erased. Because they're going to want to try to erase you in the first place. This is just one symptom of their attempt to erase light skinned and brown skinned black people. So, to me, I just think, like, if I understand dark skinned black people who have this issue don't like the image of light skinned and brown skinned people, and that's their business. I would prefer them to actually love themselves rather than hating on someone else. Because when they hate on someone else, it's usually not because they just don't prefer their phenotype, kind of thing. It's just because they feel insecure about their own phenotype. But if that's the case, then brown skin and light skin black people have to move accordingly, in my opinion. And I think, like, brown skin and light skin black people, a lot of us, I think, are trying to appease dark skinned black people because that's all we've ever done. I see this in many situations where it just seems like light skin and brown skin, especially light skin, black people will try to continuously appease them as if they're in debt to them or something. And it's sad. And it's sad because, honestly, they're just going to use it against them. You know, I've always known and learned with certain types of dark skinned black people, and this is not all of them, obviously, but the ones that have this issue, no matter how you come about it, no matter what you do, they're always going to see you as the enemy. And no matter how you approach the situation, no matter how um, you try to benefit them as much as you can, they're always going to work against you.